How do you get an independent comedy drama film into cinemas? I spoke to Marc Marriott, who's just done that with his film Tokyo Cowboy, that's been released in cinemas in Japan and the US and Canada. So tell me a little bit about your route into filmmaking.
Yeah, so I did go to film school. I did my undergraduate work at Brigham Young University in Utah. Then I did my graduate filmmaking degree, directing degree at University of Southern California, or UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles. And I had always wanted to be in a creative field. I was really into drama and musicals when I was younger. I was an actor. And then I got really interested in photography, other creative pursuits, and really started hone in on directing. And it's kind of an interesting or long story as to how I got to this point doing my first feature, because I recently did my first feature film, and it had been a long time that I had a long career in more like documentary, corporate industrial video, television. So got into that right away and kind of returned in a way to my filmmaking roots of doing a feature film,
Right.
a narrative
And I
feature film.
notice, I notice, so this is good. You're either going to tell me it's all nonsense because you know what IMDb is like, but I'm looking at your IMDb page and it's saying he went off to Japan. Now, tell me if this is nonsense. And you've been mentored. And again, I'm going to mangle this name because I'm no good at
Yeah,
pronunciation.
Yoji Yamada.
Yoji Yamada. Right. So now I'm not that familiar with Japanese cinema. So I looked him up and I was like, geez, quite a lot of credits on there, so he knows his stuff.
Yeah,
Tell
he
me
is like
about that.
yeah, Yoji Yamada is like an absolute institution of Japanese cinema. He's in his 90s now. He just released his 90th film. And he basically is like, as long as Clint Eastwood is going and making films, I'm going to keep making films. So when I was this was before my graduate work, I wrote to him. I had lived in Japan for a couple of years as a missionary. I spoke some Japanese. I reached out to him and just basically said, "Hey, would you like to have an American apprentice on one of your films?" And surprisingly, I wrote to him in Japanese, so that was helpful. But he wrote back and said, "Yeah, like I'm doing my next film. You can come and join us. We're going to start in Vienna, Austria. You can join us there. We're shooting there for, I think it was about a month or so. And then I went to Tokyo and worked with him there. And it was a really amazing experience. I learned a lot from him just by observing him and how he works. And Yoji Yamada, he makes these really these films that are filled with a lot of humanity and humor. And this one series that he was doing was called Torasan, and it's about this kind of everyman that goes on these adventures and always kind of returns home, and it was delightful. And I worked on the 41st film in the series with him, Torasan Otoko wa Tsurayo. It's hard to be a man.
So for someone like me who's not seen any of his films, where should I start if I was going to check out some of his stuff?
Yeah, so like the Torasan films are the Torasan film series is the one that he's very well known for. But before that, he did like a film called The Yellow Handkerchief, um, the Twilight Samurai series is quite good. And yeah, if you look up his credits, he's had a lot of different films over the years, nominated for different awards around the country, around the world, Academy Awards, things like that. So, but he's an interesting guy because he sees himself as kind of a just like a simple craftsman, like he's making, like he's like, in Japan, this is a very Japanese thing to be just like a craftsman that's like really concerned about just that one bowl of soup that you're making, and making the best bowl of soup that you possibly can. And so for him, he's talked a lot in the last few years about how a lot of film for him, the current state of cinema seems to him to be very they're just like these sugary desserts, right? And he wants to make this very nourishing bowl of cinema soup. And so like his films are substantial, and in that they're just like, they're really human, they're humorous, but they kind of feed your soul. And so I wanted to make films. It was um it was an aspiration of mine to make films like that. And I think we were able to do that with Tokyo Cowboy. So
Yeah. Well, I will come to Tokyo Cowboy. Before I leave him behind, first of all, what an amazing opportunity to actually just write to someone and they say yes. Come to Vienna.
incredible.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
So before I move away from him, what for somebody who's starting out in the industry, how useful and important is it to have some sort of mentor figure?
I think it's incredibly helpful. Basically every opportunity you have to learn is so valuable. And that's what I learned from my experience in Japan when I went just first living there. I really needed to open my ears and listen and learn, and instead of putting forth what I know and like being you know being I was enthusiastic and pretty sure of myself, but sometimes we need to find a little bit of humility and let ourselves learn from other cultures, other people, mentors, certainly. I think that's really critical. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of counter to what you, maybe not what you're taught, but as a director, you're asked loads of questions all the time, and you might feel like you need to have every single answer, but oftentimes you don't. But it is tempting to want to be able to answer every single question.
Yeah, it's such a delicate balance, because as a director, you are supposed to make sure that your vision is communicated, right? And yet you need to filmmaking is such a collaborative medium. You're reliant on all of these different departments. You have to let people bring their best to the film. And so oftentimes, like, I will be like really clear about what I want, but sometimes somebody in the costuming department might say like, well, have you considered this? What about this other idea? And then, like, if you don't listen to those things and consider them, now sometimes there's just like, look, today's not the day. This is a war. Like, we're in a battle for our lives, and the sun's going down, and we just can't take the time. But if you're well prepared and you have a really good plan for each day, then you can allow those really important suggestions to kind of come to you and use them. You're going to be really smart if you use the best of what people have to offer and give them a chance to really shine.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about Tokyo Cowboy.
Yeah. And I'm wearing my Tokyo Cowboy shirt.
Nice.
I got my poster back here.
Nice.
So yeah, actually, this is the Japanese version of the poster. This was
Very
the
cool.
lobby card that they would have in Japan. We released the film theatrically in Japan and in the United States, and this week it's actually in Taiwan in theaters.
All right.
So Tokyo Cowboy is about this businessman who pitches an idea to his company to go and kind of reclaim or improve this cattle ranch in Montana. He works for a company that acquires different companies, mostly food and agricultural companies, and he's got this idea of taking this American uh, ranch and making it into a premium like Wagyu beef operation. At its core, this is really a story about bridging divides between people and cultures. He goes on this journey. He doesn't realize how deeply unhappy he is and how unconnected he is to his job, to the land, to like everything that he says he is. He's really not. He's not connected to his fiance. So there's like a love story in there too, but it's really essentially about this character going on a journey of self-discovery in the American West. And like I can't think of two more incredibly diverse landscapes and places to be than Tokyo and Montana. And so it was really fun to kind of like find a way to tell this story across these two very different locations.
Sure. And so I'll ask you some of the sort of technical things about the film that people, because obviously the people who listen to this are probably filmmakers. They may be thinking about doing their first feature film. You've got your background in television as well. So first thing they're always going to wonder is, how do you raise the finance for a film like that, especially something that you've taken a little, it sounds awesome. You've taken a little bit of time to explain it to me properly. It's not a shark versus a Bigfoot. So what's the best way to articulate that to people, and how did you manage to raise the finance?
Yeah, it's a good question. Part of that was, and one of the biggest lessons that I learned on this film project was the importance of surrounding yourself with people that can elevate what you're trying to do. So I had this idea for a long, long time. I had seen back at the time that I had done this internship with Yoji Yamada, the Japanese film director. It was around that same time I saw an article in a magazine about a real ranch in Montana owned by a Japanese company, and they would send workers over to learn how to, and they'd become Japanese cowboys. But that was all I had. It was just like, hey, this could be a really cool movie. I had a friend of mine, like, you got to reach out to your network and create your network. I had a really good friend that I went to my undergraduate with. We also we were, what do you call it, volunteers at the Sundance Filmmakers Lab together. We both moved to Los Angeles at the same time. His name is Brigham Taylor, and he started in a low-level job at Disney and then like worked his way up into amazing producing credits. It was his idea to do Pirates of the Caribbean. He produced Jungle Book. Like, he's an amazing producer. And so many, many years later, I was having a conversation with my friend Brigham, and I was like, hey, I really want to direct a feature film. And he said, well, pitch me some ideas. Tell me what you have. So I pitched this idea, and he was really interested because it was very different from all the studio films that he had been doing. And he's a big fan of independent cinema. So having Brigham on it as like developing this story with him, that was really key. And it was also key to reaching out to potential individual investors, because we raised the funds for this from just everyday people, individual investors, people that I knew. I just approached everybody that I knew. I had a pitch deck. I had this story. I had Brigham's attachment. People knew me and what I had done, and felt comfortable with my ability and just that if I said I was going to do this, they had the confidence that I was going to do it, right? So I think there were a couple of things that I had the advantage in that, like I had worked in the industry for 20 plus years. I had a track record, even though it wasn't with feature films. I had attached somebody that had really good credits. And so there was a level of confidence that the investors had. But I'd say for anybody starting out, it's just like, you've got to work within your network and broaden your network and have a really clear idea of what you're trying to do, and just approach people. And most everybody that invested in this film were people that had never invested in film. You know, these are just like high net worth individuals who thought, "Ah, this is different. This could be fun," you know, like, and they're all, you know, executive producers on the film. We raised the money from it's about 20 different investors. Um, so that was how we did that.
So I'm taking away from that. The first thing you said, which was interesting, was your pal from way back has now had this rise up, and he's working for Disney and he's doing all this stuff. So, because a lot of things I hear is, especially from students, is this idea that, you know, right place, right time, or you've got to know all the right people, but kind of keeping connections and keeping close with people. You never know where they're going to end up. So that's the first thing. And it's
Yeah,
great you've
very
managed to
true.
get all this money from private investors and you're not tied to creating a certain type of film to get the money. Am I right in saying, is some of it in Japanese
It
or not?
is.
Is it
Yeah,
all English? It is.
the story starts in Tokyo. The first the first, I think, about 7 or 8 minutes is in Japanese, and then they come to Montana. Our main actor, that was the other thing that was a really smart decision. We chose, our first choice for the lead was a guy named Arata Ayura, who I became familiar with. I didn't know him before, but he's a really big actor in Japan. And we were able to get the script into his hands through another producer in Japan that we met through our writers. And so having him attached to this film was really huge in Japan. That helped us open doors for like the Japanese distributor and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah. I
I'm
did
not
notice
sure
actually. I did
why
look.
I was going off on that.
No, that's fine. I was look. Yeah, about it was about doing some of it in Japanese, and I think
Yeah,
I
yeah.
did look up him again. I looked up. I went down a bit of a rabbit hole. I was like,
I
wow,
mean, the
he's got lots of
interesting thing
credits.
about Arata is he really doesn't speak English.
Right.
So
So
he
that's
had to
yeah. That's going to be my
practice.
question.
Yeah, he had to practice an amazing amount of time to just be understood in English. And the story is about somebody that isn't really great in English and and that's part of the communication difficulty, you know, in America. And there's some jokes that come through that, and like really the humor in the film is all it's all this, you know, out of natural situations. We took really great pains to make sure that we you know, the humor wasn't at the expense of any person or culture, right? Like it's one of the great things about this is we've had people in Japan say that they feel like this is a film that was made by a Japanese film director, and that's a huge compliment, right? So it's a film that's been really embraced by people in Japan.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how good at speaking Japanese are you? Where do you sit on the scale?
I lost a lot of my ability to speak Japanese. You know, like I was, you know, 19, 20 years old when I spoke more fluently, and then like just didn't have a lot of opportunity to use it, and sadly, but a lot of it came back. You can always understand a lot more than you can speak, and so I could understand a lot of what was going on, and I could get by, and so I can get by. I'm pretty good at speaking Japanese, but on set, like it was really important to have some really good translators because you're talking about like very, you know, specific and like delicate, emotional kind of beats and things like that that you really don't want to have misunderstanding. So that was great to have some translators.
Yeah, I have trouble in English articulating what I'm telling actors, so I don't know
Yeah,
how you do
don't we
it.
all?
Yeah, you need that translator. So the film looks like cinema release Japan, cinema release America. I haven't watched it. And the reason for that is where can I see it in the UK yet, or whereabouts? Where can we find it?
In the UK, it's not available yet. I would really love to find a distributor in Europe and the United Kingdom. Right now, it's available on all the major platforms in the United States and Canada. So Apple TV, Amazon Prime, Google Play, Fandango at Home. It's really easy to find it in the United States. And I think we're doing really well. And people are finding the film, even though it's tough for independent films. Like the studios have all those spots online, and like really, unless you're looking for the film or know about it, it's hard to find it. But we're doing okay because the film we've been blessed with really great word of mouth. We're at like 98% on the popcorn meter on Rotten Tomatoes, 91% for critics score. People really like the film, so that's been great.
That's
But
a good
maybe you
position
can
to be
help
in.
me spread the word or find a distributor in the UK, and I'll be happy to send you a screener as well.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to check it out, and as soon as it does come out, I'll put a link on this episode so people can watch it in the UK. And so you're, I take it from that you're going direct to distributors, are you, in each territory, or have you got a sales agent? How are you doing it?
We have pretty much just gone directly to distributors for Japan, United States. We met our U.S. distributor at a film festival, but I just recently found a couple of sales agents that I think will be good for specifically Latin America. And so I'm gonna kind of just unleash them to find some different good opportunities for the film. So I may be looking for like a sales agent in Europe or some of these other territories. But it's kind of like this. It's kind of a full-time job, distribution, and it takes a lot of effort. And right now, at least, like I did not pay myself a salary to do the film. I worked for about a year and a half on this, and just like lived off our savings. And so it's tough, because like any time that I spend on the film promoting it or going to festivals or things like that, I'm not really getting paid for that. Like I need to pay back my investors first, and then down the line, hopefully some day I'll start making money. But for right now, I still have to like make a living and support my family.
Mm. Yeah, that is a common theme when I chat to filmmakers.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about festivals there. So you've had so far I've seen on IMDb good festival run. Apart
Yeah.
from having a good film, are there any other tips for festivals you got for people?
I think festivals are so specific. And that was one thing that really surprised me is like, some festivals that I thought for sure we would get in, we didn't get in. Some festivals that were surprising that we did get in. And so, and it depends on, there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think, they get a lot of films. And so whoever watches it first makes a big difference, whoever that person is, and then they push it along, higher in the line, and then it gets to like the programmers and such. But so I would do your research to figure out, what festivals kind of, if they've had films similar to your film, or if they're like kind of, you can kind of get a flavor of a film festival by visiting their website and seeing what films they've programmed before and what films have won awards. We were fortunate to win a lot of different awards. We premiered the film at the Tallgrass Film Festival, and we won the Best Narrative Feature Award, and we won the Audience Choice Award at that festival. So that was a really good starting place for us. One of the things that I learned, because everybody that I talk to that, has just a little bit of knowledge about film festivals, they're like, well, why didn't you go to Sundance? Like, why, did you apply for Sundance? It's like, look, Sundance, the thing that you don't want, like if you get into Sundance, that's great, but the thing you don't want to be is the smallest film, or the film that nobody knows about at Sundance, and you get a screening at 11 a.m. and it's over, right? um and we were trying to decide, in our case, we applied to Sundance, and I got a really nice letter from one of the programmers that liked the film, but which is unusual. I don't think you ever hear anything if you don't get programmed. So we didn't get into Sundance, but it actually, I think in the end run, it was much better for us. And we were at the time deciding between premiering at the Hawaii International Film Festival or the Tallgrass Film Festival. And I talked to a good friend who's also a director who had been to both of those festivals. So that's the other thing. Talking to people that have been to these different festivals is really helpful. And she said, look, on paper, the Hawaii Film Festival looks better, but your film is going to do a lot better at the Tallgrass Film Festival, and it's a really awesome upcoming film festival. You should really go there. And we listened to that advice, and I'm really glad that we did. We had to give up being in competition at the Hawaii Film Festival, International Film Festival, but I don't think we probably would have won the main prize like we did at Tallgrass. So just, kind of doing some research and talking to people about what festivals are good, and what if they're, like there's all kinds of genre film festivals. There's different themed festivals. You're going to find your niche and go after that.
Yeah. The worst thing you can do, and I have done this in the past, is go on Film Freeway and go, oh, that one's only $20. I'll go for
Yeah.
that. There's that
Yeah.
one. I'll go for that. Oh, that one looks good, and just not think. Have
I
I
mean,
actually got a chance at those
there's a whole
festivals?
industry of, you know, film festival consultants that will
Yeah,
help
yeah,
you,
yeah.
will watch your film and like tell you which film festivals to join or to apply to. So, that can be maybe valuable. But there's a reason that there's that job description for somebody, because there's an incredible number of film festivals. It's crazy how many there are. And it seems like there's more and more every year. So there's definitely a place for everybody's film.
Yeah. Do your research, definitely. So then, what I was going to say to you is, uh, what's your main piece of advice for somebody thinking about making their first feature film, or is there anything that you would have done differently if you could sort of go back in time and start again?
I mean, that, the one main advice that I have, I already said, which is surround yourself with people that are really talented, that can elevate what you're trying to do. Don't think you can do it all yourself. If you can't convince somebody else that your idea is good, then it might not be that great, honestly, like so but I think in my case, I kind of lamented the fact that I didn't do a feature film right out of film school. I was attached to do a feature film right out of film school. It was a John Updike novel called Of the Farm. We had John Ritter attached to be in it. Then John Ritter died, and like we couldn't raise the money. And meanwhile, we're about to have our first baby, and somebody in the apartment building that I lived in Santa Monica, California, worked in television, and she's like, hey, like, why don't you come work in TV? So I loved all of that, all of those years, and I still love the work that I do in like corporate video, in television, in documentary. It's all really valuable. And there's a lot of things from my documentary work that I brought to this feature film, kind of techniques, different ways of working. It's all really informative and educational. And so I would say just whatever opportunities you have, make the most of them, work really hard, show up. Like half of the battle is just like showing up on time and being willing to work hard. and people will notice you and give you, opportunities, and you'll learn. And I think it was really important for me to know all the different jobs. Like I had done some cinematography work. I had worked on sound. I had done art department. I built sets. Like that really helps you, because then as a director, you're like, okay, I know what I can expect of this crew position, and what's, how they do their job, and a little bit of understanding is helpful, so you're not just like killing people. But also like knowing that, like, hey, I've done this, and you can do this, like this is
Yeah.
gonna work out.
Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you want to hear about another independent filmmaker who's made a comedy drama, then you could listen to my episode with Tiffany Kim Stevens, where she talks about her film Trigger Happy. It's been released on all streaming platforms, and she gives some great tips about getting the film out there.